People of London and surrounding territories, the Around the NFL podcast is coming back to your neck of the woods Thursday, October 12th at the Shaw Theatre in London town. And you can be there, but you're going to have to buy tickets, Mark.
You got to buy them. Greg, give them the information. If they don't buy them, what are they doing here in London?
It's going to go on sale Wednesday morning, 9 o'clock. London time, Wednesday morning, September 20th. So it's soon if you're listening to this. The pre-sale code is WES. Again, the pre-sale, 9 o'clock Wednesday morning. Check our socials on Tuesday. We're going to put the links up on the Around the NFL handle. We'll put them up on Twitter, a.k.a. X. Don't wait for the general on sale. That goes on sale on Friday, the 22nd. But the Shaw Theater be a little smaller than the one a year ago, so I think tickets are going to go fast. Make sure you jump on it.
Yes, tickets are limited, so be there. It's fun, always a good time. We love doing live shows in London, and we can't wait to see you again. Here we go, baby.
The Around the NFL podcast. Thinks fumbling makes the game more fun.
Welcome to another edition of Around the NFL. My name is Dan Hanzus, coming to you from a virtual room filled with heroes. Marc Sessler, Gregg Rosenthal. It is a super-packed Monday night show. Quick note, you heard at the very top of the show, live show from London. Get your tickets this week or miss out. Also, a little shift to our schedule. We are going to be doing our Monday night program, Monday Night Recap, and we're adding our news to this show, so a little different than the schedule that maybe you saw last week. We're figuring it out. That's how it works around here, Greg. Trial and error, baby.
And this one is jammed. Not just the two Monday night games, which were wild and ugly and weird, but like a lot of big news around the league. Unfortunately, the biggest one happened in this game. I'm feeling a little bit of a flashback to last Monday night in terms of the vibes of losing one of the best players in the league. Yeah,
Cleveland Browns running back Nick Chubb suffered a terrible knee injury, one of those type of injuries that the telecast does not even show replays of. After the game, a narrow win by the Steelers. Coach Kevin Stefanski confirmed that Chubb is done for the season with a significant injury. According to Rap Sheet, that injury includes multiple torn ligaments. He'll have tests done, but Mark, Chubb, who's a guy that everybody loves to watch, one of the very best players in the league, to see him go down like this completely undercut tonight's football.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you looked at how you organize offenses, almost all of them are around a quarterback, and Cleveland can say it's around their quarterback, but it's been around Nick Chubb for years. And it's pretty telling to me that when he was taken off the field, that you're in Pittsburgh Stadium and Steelers fans, the number one rivalry to Cleveland, hate the Browns in many ways. Like, and what do you get? You have Steelers fans chanting his name as he's taken away, because I think that Nick Chubb, if you've watched football for a long time, if you watch sports, like, he harks back to something a little bit different than the mouthy athletes you might get from today. He's silent. He just goes about his work. He punishes people. He's consistent. He's the heart of that offense, and he's gone.
And the crowd there saw the injury, which a lot of people at home didn't, watching the ESPN broadcast, and they mentioned Joe and Troy doing the game, just how they gasped. And we had a second monitor up at work while I was watching, so I did see it too. And it's just unfortunate that it's so similar to a week ago, that this guy who's a franchise player, and to me, if like you needed one person on planet Earth to get 6 yards for you in a given play, and he was playing fantastic tonight. He was the best player on the field while he was on the field tonight. To me, it would be Nick Chubb. So it's just really disappointing. And then the way the game played out, and we'll get to that, really reminded me of that too, where the team that couldn't get a first down, that was kind of outplayed for most of it, ends up coming back and winning that game. The difference here is the Browns, lost Chubb, and they lost the game too.
It's just a nightmare situation. It's the football is a beautiful game, but the injury side of it, it's just you can't you just almost can't fathom that somebody as talented as Chubb suffers an injury that gruesome. And now we only hope that this is something where doctors and modern science gets him right and he's back on the field and he's a comeback player of the year type guy next year. But for now, Nick Chubb's season is over, and let's now get to the games. We're going to do both the Monday Night Football games, and then we're going to do news, just get you caught up on the other things going on around the league. But let's start with what happened at whatever the hell Acrisure is.
Neal showing blitz. Here he comes. Pressure ball out. Picked up. What? Touchdown Steelers.
Wow, that place was going bonkers. Even leading up to that play, that place was going bonkers. And then the huge play there, Alex Highsmith, outside linebacker, beats Jedrick Willis off the edge, chops the ball out of Deshaun Watson's hands. TJ Watt scoops it up, takes it in 17 yards for the go-ahead touchdown midway through the fourth quarter, and that was the difference for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who, behind 2 defensive touchdowns, beat the Cleveland Browns 26-22 on Monday night in a game that, you know, it's just unbelievable. The Browns against the rival Steelers, losing Nick Chubb, and then you lose this game on top of it. It's just terrible. For the Steelers, they needed it. They needed this game, Greg, from their defense, because once again, the offense, with, you know, there were moments here and there in this game. They were better than week 1, which isn't saying much, but they needed multiple scores from their defense to take this game, and they just happened to get it on Monday night.
Right. They had the 71-yard touchdown to George Pickens on a slant, a pretty routine play that he just took off, and there was a hole in the Browns defense. Beyond that, they only had 8 other first downs, and basically no big plays other than that one. There were 9 total. They had like that 30-yard dump off to a running back. They just couldn't get yards. And once you got into the fourth quarter and the Browns had retaken the lead, and their offense had their share of struggles, certainly, but they were moving the ball a little bit better. You really thought that the Steelers, who pinned Cleveland back inside their 5-yard line twice, were going to have to score to win this game. The defense was going to have to score to win this game, and they actually did it. And TJ Watt gets the glory with the touchdown, but Alex Highsmith was part of both touchdowns. He had the pick 6 early on the deflection, and he had the forced fumble, and it wasn't because of injuries. It was against the left tackle, Jedrick Wills, their first-round pick, and Highsmith has turned into maybe the premier second pass rusher in the league. One of them, DeMarcus Lawrence. There's other great ones, but he was fantastic tonight, and he was part of a Steelers defense that had 11 quarterback hits, 6 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, and 8 passes defense. They just were all over the place making big plays, and that's what they needed because their offense wasn't going to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, if you told me 5 hours ago that Pittsburgh at home would have 6 sacks, 4 takeaways, and 2 defensive touchdowns, I wouldn't suggest the Browns would win that game. They're 1-22 coming into this game under Kevin Stefanski in games where they trail by 4 points in the fourth quarter. That tells you a lot. The Steelers have won 21 games in a row on Monday Night Football. Cleveland and Pittsburgh have a... Yeah,
they've won 21 games in a row on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, they have a pretty ingrained DNA against Cleveland, and like I would say that you know, obviously I have my own complicated relationship with the Browns right now, but I found myself getting worked up, and it wasn't just the Chubb injury; it was just the way that you got into the latter stages of this game, and you kind of sold your soul to surround yourself around Deshaun Watson, who continues to not play very well. You know, Amari Cooper, what a gutsy performance to go out injured with a groin injury and play the way he did, to even suit up and go in there. I watch this Browns team on offense, and it's like I'm watching Jim Schwartz on the defensive coordinator. Like, he is dialed in, and this defense is special. And it kind of reminds me a little bit. It's not to the same degree, but the Jets on defense give you a chance to win, and the Browns defense does the same. And I just have no faith that this quarterback and this offense is going to pull you out of a hole. And it's just like they look lost to me on that side of the ball. And I don't know. It was a very frustrating watch. There's so much talent with Myles Garrett and everyone on that side of the ball. That's why I think I have faith that they can still go win 9 or 10 games without Chubb. I think Jerome Ford seems like a potentially competent fill-in for Chubb, but you've lost the heart and soul of your offense, and I don't trust the quarterback.
The parallels, Mark, on a personal aside here, are not lost on me, and I'm sure many listeners that, like, your history with the Browns, my history with the Jets, and what happened last week at the Meadowlands. It was like this special defense that has this star on the other side of the ball that if you put these two things together, special things could happen. And Cleveland, that's what Chubb represents. Now, Deshaun Watson is the guy that they, like you said, on some level you could say sold their soul to get that QB1 they've been searching for since Bernie Kosar. But it was Chubb that was the engine of this offense. And, yeah, I think there is something, if you're a Browns fan, to take out of Jerome Ford, who had that beautiful 69-yard run where he almost took it to the house. And you can say, okay, we still have an offensive line that can maul in the run game, and maybe Watson puts it together. But the Deshaun Watson side of it, I think he struggled here in one. I think the first big, like, kind of Showtime, primetime moment with the Browns where you got to make the play. He was kind of holding that ball out like a loaf of bread on the big strip fumble recovery, and then was not able to make anything happen on the ensuing drive to dig him out of it. That's what they're paying him for, to make a play on one of those possessions, and it just didn't happen. So a night of epic frustrations for Cleveland. Watson not getting it done was kind of like the reverse cherry on top.
Yeah, it almost felt like the Steelers' defense at the beginning of that final drive. Watson gets the ball back, needing a touchdown to go win the game in Pittsburgh. Tough spot, especially the way that they had looked. And the Steelers start dropping coverage, and actually was protected pretty well and made a couple nice throws. That's the thing about the Watson experience, especially this year so far, is there are nice throws. He's obviously a talented player. He had 5 or 6 throws tonight that were excellent, or they were just out of bounds, like the timing was off. But there were more plays that just spoke of a quarterback who wasn't confident in what he was seeing. Troy Aikman pointed out quite a bit where he was just late on everything. You thought of the first couple of plays of the game, not a miscommunication on that pick six. We don't know who's at fault, but it was ultimately a bad throw where they're not on the same page. He's late on a wide open kind of hitch route where a guy's over the middle, and that's just an unforced error. And then on the last drive, this is an effect of a good defensive coordinator, started sending the heat, and they got a lot of pressure on him, but you saw his eyes coming down really fast. There was a play around midfield where he was actually protected well on that final drive. And almost immediately after he didn't see someone open, he just sort of started running around in a circle when actually he was protected, and he ran into his own pressure and then wound up getting sacked. And there were just many of those moments where you could tell he's not comfortable in this offense. He doesn't seem to know what he's seeing in the same way that he used to when he was in Houston.
You saw some cutaways to Stefanski on the sideline, including one late in the game. I believe it was the kind of last sack he took before the fourth down.
I think that might be the very play I'm talking about.
Yeah, and they cut to Stefanski, who had a kind of look on his face like, oh, man, we need to be a little better than that. And so they have a lot of work to do, obviously, on offense, and it's going to be more difficult without Chubb. And like we said, Mark, the Pittsburgh totally flatlined on offense in week 1. So you could look at, in some ways, progress, but like Gregg said, 8 first downs. Like, this is a problem. This is now 2 weeks in where you have one of the worst offenses in football. You got totally bailed out by your defense that had an all-time primetime effort. Otherwise, you're 0-2 and you're asking questions that you don't want answers to potentially.
Yep, I would say a bright spot is George Pickens, who probably had the best game of his career. But I'm looking at an imbalanced attack that had 2 yards rushing in the first half. Everything that we heard about in the summer, that I wouldn't say that that's what I fell for with the Steelers. I just kind of like the idea of their talent growing up together. They're not there yet. And you're relying on TJ Watt kind of like week after week, and he went up against a rookie right tackle tonight, and that was not a bad matchup for him at all. But like I'm watching this offense now. You played San Francisco and you played Cleveland. These may be 2 of the top 3 or 4 defenses in the league. So there's that, and you can keep resetting. It's early in the year, and I do think that Pickett in general has a lot of chance to grow. But it's 2 weeks in a row where it's like, Matt Canada, you got a lot of pressure on you. They kept cutting away to him, and it's like then they're cutting to the crowd and they're shaking their head because they can't convert X, Y, and Z, and it's like it's a frustrating situation when one side of the ball is not living up to the other side. It creates problems. I trust the defense 100%, and Pittsburgh's offense is an absolute TBD.
Every time they get a couple running plays going, you can almost smell that Matt Canada's going to do some wonky end around to Calvin Austin that's going to lose like 4 yards, or they needed 1 yard in that final drive to maybe put away the game, and they do this crazy complicated play that you could, with motion and handoffs, and Pickett's like faking it almost like it's an option, and it's like something the Eagles would pull off or the Chiefs would pull off, and they'd look great, and they just completely botch it and lose 3 yards, and they just seem to not know what to count on. But I do think they're talented enough to eventually get there. I just don't know if the coaching is there.
One last note here. Minkah Fitzpatrick, standout defensive back of the Steelers, he also suffered an injury in this game. It was a chest injury, and he ended up at a local hospital undergoing evaluation. Also, that the play, it's interesting, just as from a pure now just watching sports fan on TV. I don't know where you guys come down on the don't show the injury side of things. They used to in the old days. I remember Napoleon McCallum on Monday Night Football 30 years ago suffered a grotesque knee injury for the Raiders that they would show over and over and over again.
Joe Theismann, they would always show that one.
Joe Theismann. I mean, how about this Super Bowl Sunday when you've got Grandma Nellie watching Tim Crumry? They showed his legs snapping too.
And now we've kind of hit the point where we treat these serious injuries as if how broadcasting treats fans that run on the field. Like, don't show it. I'm not saying I need to see it, but like I'm seeing a bunch of tweets here about people coming after Minkah Fitzpatrick for a low hit and everything. I didn't see enough of it because of the way the telecast handled the injury, and I understand why they do it, but also it is a sports telecast. It's kind of a news event for the league. They just not seeing what happened was kind of interesting, but that's how it's done now. It's just more a observation rather than me.
Yeah, it's new. I think that's really just the last couple of years that's come up. But that was a condensed play in the box where, he dove at him to tackle him. I think that's a typical football play. And it's part of the reason why there's a little bit of a downbeat note tonight. It's like that injury happened. There were just injuries everywhere. Greg Newsome, the great slot cornerback for the Browns, had an elbow injury and left this game. Denzel Ward never came back from the locker room, as far as I knew, when he left the game with an injury. So it was just Zadarius Smith left at one point and was carted off, or was helped off the field, and then he did return to the game. It was just like an endless sea of misery with these injuries. You've
just named 3 of their top 4 defensive players.
Right.
And the whole the Browns situation, for me, like Mark, getting to know you all these years and understanding the kind of shared DNA of pain and what it feels like to be a fan that your team is cursed. Like the Deshaun Watson situation really did cloud what remains a great fan base and a team with proud tradition that is trying to get over the hump and back to being a competitive team year after year, and set up so well. Everyone has their feelings about Watson, but I feel for Browns fans, just like I know a lot of Browns fans and other team and fan bases that never seem to get over the hump, felt for the Jets on Monday night. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add, Mark.
Well, all I'd say is the one thing about these seasons, because you got to ride the wave, and do I want to be like the 7th grade me that goes into some sort of a shell and doesn't emerge again? It's like they have another game with Pittsburgh in Cleveland, and so you want to split with the Steelers, and if you go into any season then knowing you're going to split with your number 1 rival arch enemy, you'd be all right with that. And so there's another chance for this. Can the offense become more Watson-esque? Because it's not so Nick Chubb focused. I don't like the idea of that, but maybe that helps him. He doesn't seem comfortable in this offense right now. That's sort of the the thing that we just don't know. It's extremely frustrating because I think if you're a Browns fan and if you're been following a struggling franchise, there's always going to be one or two teams that just pound you like, year after year. And the Browns-Steelers rivalry has not been one. Outside of that Baker Mayfield playoff game. And frankly, Baker Mayfield's played better than Deshaun Watson right now. So like these fortunes that you seek, you don't know where they're going to take you. And so we'll see what happens. I think if you're a Browns fan and you're dyed in the wool, you've got a great defense and you see what happens. You kicked the butt of the Bengals a week ago. You're 1-1 in the division. It's
you
a long
outplayed the
season.
Steelers tonight. It should be mentioned by about 150 yards and
They
dominated
did,
on the
but
ground.
that's where I start to push back because they did. But I mentioned that stat under Stefanski. They don't have the DNA of a team that finds a way in the end to win it. They find a way to just not win it, and it's like you've got to switch that. You cannot be that team. And they went and got the quarterback thinking that would change all that, and in fact, it made it more emphatic. He seems more lost. They seem more lost than at any other time on some level, considering the talent, and I don't like that.
And the Steelers, 1991. October 14th, 1991, the last time they lost Monday Night Football. Am I crazy, or is that actually, like, we had fun with the Ravens preseason winning streak? Isn't that even crazier?
It is. It's crazier. I don't know how that one slipped.
I mean, it's a testament to how incredible they, in terms of consistency, from Chuck Noll to Bill Cowher to now Mike Tomlin, but to never lose once. And they play Monday night every year a couple times.
Yeah, dude, I was getting like a hard C- in Algebra 2 the last time they lost a Monday Night Football game. So
it's like Vanilla Ice was like on the top of the charts. That's 1991. All right, let's move to the other Monday night game. This one played in Charlotte.
And Jones makes a cut and scores from the practice squad to the end zone. What a night for Tony Jones Jr. stepping up after Jamal Williams went down, and the Saints stretched the lead. 2-possession game, 3:14 to play.
The annoying thing is that Chris Olave had a really great play. He just stepped out of bounds. So it gets marked back, and then we have a fairly routine touchdown run by Tony Jones. But you know what?
It was that kind of night. It was that kind of game.
Yeah, it was that kind of night. You're right. Wait, does anybody want to hear the fact that I needed 3 points from Jamal Williams tonight in my fantasy league? No, probably nobody needs to hear that.
Please tell us more.
Another
Get
injury.
well soon, Jamal.
Another injury.
The Saints take care of business on the road, beating a Panthers team that is still searching for it on offense. 20-17. Derek Carr and the New Orleans offense. No great shakes in this game. Again, playing without Alvin Kamara suspended and losing Jamal Williams early on. That doesn't help a lot. You got a lot of Taysom Hill in this game. And just like last week, Derek Carr maybe didn't overwhelm with great quarterback play, but when he needed a big play, he hits Rashid Shaheed for 45 yards. That was a major conversion in this game. And from there, Mark, it was about the defense of the Saints, which pretty much this looks closer than it really was. It was 2010, and then they played this like crazy prevent D, which drives me nuts, to give up 8 more points. It was 20-9, but Carolina did nothing in this game on offense.
Yeah, so I would give credit to Derek Carr because I think that the opposite of what I just talked about with Cleveland's offense is that 2 weeks in a row, Carr seems emotionally unaffected by the slow start and finds a way to make plays and get the Saints out of trouble in this. You're helped by playing a Carolina offense that is, underdeveloped and lost at sea. Their offensive line play is rough. You've got Adam Thielen and DJ Chark as your wideouts. They had 44 yards rushing like midway through the third quarter, 85 yards total in the first half. Bryce Young is just sort of figuring it out. And the Saints defense comes in and takes advantage of that. I kind of watched this and felt like, why is this on prime? It did not feel like a primetime game to me. It did not feel like there's 2 islands tonight, but it didn't feel like it belonged on any island to me. It was a bit of a rough watch, but it's like you're going to get that because you're throwing Bryce Young on national television in week 2, and I like some things I see, but it's like that's the Saints. It's a sitting duck for the New Orleans Saints.
Well, not all primetime games are created equal.
Certainly not.
The ESPN ABC chooses which game to send the A team to. That was the first game we talked about. And then it's a spot where you get the number 1 overall pick in primetime before they might have a bad record later in the year. This is only 0-1. Unfortunately, a lot of times early picks aren't really put in a good position to succeed right away. Now, C.J. Stroud's looked okay, and Anthony Richardson's had his moments. It hadn't stayed on the field. But Bryce Young, you mentioned it, is just surrounded by so many things that aren't working. His offensive line, a lack of explosion at receiver, and he's not able to overcome that either. And it's largely because he's playing a defense that seems almost built for this moment. They built for this season. Because I was thinking the Saints didn't give up a touchdown in their first 118 minutes of this season until that garbage time. And I was like, wow, well, like it's not going to be this good though when they start playing real teams. And I look at the schedule, and it's like there aren't many good offenses on this. Atlanta will be a challenge, and there'll be other challenges. Certainly, they play Green Bay next week. I'm not saying they're a favorite for that, but you look up and down, you don't see them play a murderer's row, and they seem like the type of defense that's been together a long time. It's players, not plays. Marshawn Lattimore's given up 15 yards this year. Demario Davis made the biggest play of this game with a big-time sack on Bryce Young. They're just in tune. Pete Warner's making plays all over the field. Cameron Jordan's there. It's a good defense that I think is going to beat up on some bad offenses, and they got a lot of bad offenses on their schedule.
Yeah, and that's what kind of, just from a purist standpoint of I want this game to match, the score to match what the game was. I wish they would have played real defense on that last drive because they let the Panthers dink and dunk 75 yards for the touchdown and 2-point conversion. Bryce Young finished with 153 yards passing, and I think virtually all, if not all, those 75 yards on the last drive were on check down passes through the air, or little dump offs. So he threw for about 75 yards in the first 58 minutes of the game. They did nothing. They couldn't really get anything going on the ground. Carolina only 19 carries, so they kind of took that out of the realm of things as well. And yeah, for me, what you're saying is right, Greg. I don't see the Saints. I picked the Saints to win the division because you just don't see a huge level of competition around them. So like the Saints and the Falcons are two teams that stand out to me as groups that can win 10 or even 11 games.
How about those 2-0 Bucks? We got 3 undefeated teams in this division.
Wow.
You're not there. I'm not really putting that on that, but that's
true for
now.
That's true too.
Yeah.
And the Panthers are hanging out there. They're waiting for liftoff, Mark, because this idea, of course, is that you finally get the quarterback you want. But maybe David Tepper's learning that, well, it's not that simple either. You got to build around the kid, and right now there's just not a lot for him.
Yeah, I think their strength, if anything, you would say would be a defense that can, disrupt certain opponents. Shaq Thompson hurt tonight. J.C. Horn obviously out for a while. That's a big loss. Like, I know he's not been on the field as much as you'd want at all, but like he is a fascinating cornerback. That's a big loss for them. So it's like they're another one of these teams. Just like you're taking players out of the mix over and over, and who knows what their overall like team building philosophy is. But we're a couple years into this general manager, and like the offense is punchless without a lot of big names, and you got a rookie quarterback in a tough situation, and a defense losing guys. So it's like once again the Panthers they're a step behind, and it's like it's a developmental year. And like I like Frank Reich, and I think Frank Reich is maybe I'm saying this incorrectly, but I feel he's like a little over celebrated. Where it's like, oh, it's Frank Reich, so it's security and a great offense. Like maybe. I don't know what he's done that's such a difference-making situation from a coaching level. I think he brings like a Ron Rivera offensive types vanilla security to the organization, but I'm not overly impressed so far. It's like I don't like the offense at this point.
The good thing is it's a baseline, and they can reset expectations that they weren't maybe going to be this like great surprise team, but it is something where you just are hoping in the middle of the season they start having one of those runs where you can see the progress mostly out of Bryce Young, because they have played well on defense. I mean, you mentioned
I'd agree.
Bryce Young had 75 yards late in the game. I mean, Derek Carr wasn't above that in the middle of the third quarter. He had about 20 throws for 100 yards and had been sacked 3 or 4 times at one point. And you got Frankie Louvu and Brian Burns, and it's very similar to their Week 1 game where the defense balled out for about 2.5 quarters, and at some point they just had to give in. And that's why, again, I say players, not plays. The Saints have some good players. I mean, Michael Thomas has looked good enough. Like, he looks like Michael Thomas. He made a big play in the red zone to set up a touchdown. Chris Olave had one of the best catches of the year on the sideline, making a diving catch with that one hand that was just unbelievable. And then you mentioned Shaheed. It's like you dial up a Shaheed play every once in a while. Taysom Hill gets in there. He starts playing running back because Jamal Williams isn't in. Taysom Hill always is good for a few good plays. It's like they got some good players here. They haven't protected Carr well. That's their number one concern.
They got to be way better on offense to actually be a team that matters, though. Like, they are not, like you said, they're not protecting Carr, who's now been sacked 8 times in 2 games. They haven't scored in the first half in either game.
Fair point.
They're hitting some big throws late in the game, and in general getting the play here and there to beat mediocre competition. But this is not going to last against big time teams. But to your point, Greg, there aren't a ton on their schedule, so I don't know. Maybe they're the Vikings this year.
I could see that. I could see that. They're like the defensive version of the Vikings. It's gonna annoy people, but especially if the Falcons end up playing one. We'll see about the Bucs, but this NFC South schedule is gonna help everyone, and those teams are gonna have a chance to make the playoffs. You know, multiple teams in this division potentially over some teams that are more talented.
I can't buy into the Bucs being in this equation late in the year, but I totally can see the Saints and Falcons.
I'm not even quite
here.
there with. I'm not quite there on the Bucs.
You don't need to occupy your mind space with the Bucs at this point, Dan.
No.
In
fact, there's too many teams in this NFC South that I'm potentially supposed to be taking seriously, and I don't know if I could do it with any of them. So I'll settle for 2 right now at this juncture of the season, but I can't go there with the team in Tampa.
Even that feels generous. So that's
it is a little bit.
Speaks to your character.
All right, let's take a break here, and then we'll get you caught up on the news. All right, we're back. Let's dive into the news. Here's what you missed today. If your head was in, well, you could have been doing a lot of things, and that's what we're here to do. This will get you caught up to date. Let's start with Saquon Barkley, who exited action late in Sunday's big comeback in Arizona with an ankle injury. He looked very frustrated when it happened. Reports in the locker room painted him as an unhappy camper amidst a ton of smiles and celebrations, and you're just fearing for the worst. However, reports from Rap Sheet, there was optimism that he avoided a major injury, and then a very strange report got out there that the ankle injury is I think the term was an ordinary ankle sprain, which is a very strange way to put it. I guess that means not a high ankle sprain.
I think they're saying lower. That's what that means.
Yeah, why don't we say lower then? Ordinary is a very strange way to put it. Anyway, he's expected, according to Schefter, to miss 3 weeks, which is not ideal for the Giants, but it could have been worse.
Well, that obviously we already knew that the 49ers on Thursday night was a no-go, but the Giants basically already are in a playoff schedule type scenario because you go on to that next game against the Seahawks, then the Dolphins, then the Bills. We'll see if he's there for the Bills. It's such a TBD, but minus 25 minutes of football on Sunday, the Giants looked like a total disaster. Turn it around. Right out of the gate, coming off of that, you lose Saquon Barkley. I like Matt Breida. It's a major step down from Saquon. Their whole offense is built around Saquon, and it's kind of just like another.
You say
like
Matt Breida?
You what? I like Breida.
I
don't like him as
Matt
much
Breida is still okay.
Yeah, you got Gary Brightwell and Eric Gray, if that's your cup of tea.
I mean, Matt Breida's not an old man or anything. How old is he?
Feels like he's been around about 40 years at this point.
He has bounced around many teams. Right. You are correct, but he is only 28 and his 7th.
Why don't we call up Joe Morris? I mean, what else? Who else can we excavate?
Joe Morris
O.J.
is like
Anderson,
52 years old or something.
It's a different situation than the Browns, for instance. Though we saw Jerome Ford, and they were really excited about Jerome Ford in the preseason, and we saw 2 special runs. He also had a run that should have been like an 8-yard loss, and he ends up having a nice gain on it. The Giants have one of the most lackluster backup running back rooms, I think, in the league. So they could even look to pick someone else up, but it's Danny Dimes' time. It's time for the passing game to really carry them. And I got to say, I know it was against the Cardinals, but I was quite encouraged by his performance in that game. I think it was one of the best games of his career, just in terms of the amount of really high-quality throws he made. I don't know if he can back that up week after week, but it was encouraging considering the way this season had started, because they're going to need that passing game to carry them now, or else they could be 1-4. I mean, like, the over-under on them winning those 3 games is what? One win out of those 3 games?
I think a Giants fan will tell you in his darkest hour, he will admit, just give me one, keep my season afloat.
Get to 2-3. Yeah.
Giants fans are not that reasonable from what I recall in my life.
Danny Dimes, he's back. Joe Burrow suffered or aggravated that calf injury suffered originally in training camp. Bengals head coach Zac Taylor, he was pretty open. He wasn't sure whether Burrow will be on the field in Week 3 against the Rams. Here's Zach.
That's hard to say right now. I did it really one of the last 3 plays of the game probably. So just sore. We haven't done anything on the field yet.
All right, this is tough. Now I want to check out this Bengals schedule, because I think the move, and I know fantasy heads don't want to hear this and Bengals fans don't want to hear this, I think you got to shut this guy down for a few weeks and see if you can get this thing taken care of before it blows your season in the second half. They have home against the Rams. Then they have
Joe and Troy don't want to hear that. They're the Monday Night Football game next week.
I know. These primetime games are getting dinged a little bit with these injuries. Rams at home, at Tennessee, at Arizona. I'm telling you, today is September 18th. We're taping this game. I'm keeping Burrow out of the lineup until October 15th v. Seahawks. That's just me. I'm very concerned about this injury. It's going to be something, if they don't really give it the proper time, I don't think it ever heals, and it could blow up their whole season. It's kind of a worst-case scenario.
It is, but it's like, you know what they already did was give him that amount of time to heal from it. It's like, and when he injured it, there were people saying that he had like kind of a sleeve on his calf already, like something had already happened to him.
He alluded to that he was already fighting through it the day that he got hurt.
So I think it's
but you can, unless doctors are saying it's one of those things, well, it can't get worse if you play on it, but I don't think that's how calves work. You could rip the thing, or God forbid the Achilles goes, and then all of a sudden we're talking in an even darker world. It's just one of those injuries. The calf is a tricky one for a professional athlete, and I'd be super nervous in the Midwest.
And it's sort of, over the couple weeks of this season, it's just yet another team where their destiny just teeters on the brink, on the edge, because I kind of was like listening to people saying, like, in the lead up to the season, like, oh, we don't know about Burrow's calf, and I was like, well, isn't he healthy? Like, he's like not on the injury report, he's fine, like probably he'll be okay, and like bang, out of the gate, like he's hobbling after that loss. And it's just like, man, this thing could go so far south. And it's like, you take him out of the mix, and the Bengals are a 5-win team. And they already didn't look good with him in the lineup.
Right. I mean, their offense has struggled with him in there. You have Jake Browning. This was something I was hammering over and over in the preseason, that I didn't understand why they would go into the season with Browning v. Simeon, who just both looked terrible in the preseason. And honestly, it might have been a little canary in the coal mine there, because they were playing with the starters at some point, and they couldn't move the ball with T. Higgins and Chase, so maybe it was more of a systemic thing. But Burrow talked after the game, and he just sounded so downbeat, and it's so unlike him, and it was so different than how he sounded after Week 1, where he was very defiant after Week 1, saying, like, basically, I'm going to be great, and we just got to work through this. And then after Week 2, he's saying, I need to get some sleeps. I really can't tell how this is going to be. You could tell he was down about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be hugely frustrating, because it was something he thought was in the rear view, and for it now to pop back up at a time when the team is struggling, I think he just feels, I would imagine, in a vulnerable, frustrated spot. His greatest rival is Patrick Mahomes. There is nothing negative to report around Mahomes on this Monday night, because the superstar quarterback and the Kansas City Chiefs agreed to terms on a restructured deal that pays the QB $210.6 million between now and the 2026 season. That's the most in history over a 4-year span, according to Rap Sheet and the Pell Raiser. The agreement could reach $218 million with escalators by the end of 26. And here's the thing that's kind of interesting about this one, Greggy. 210 all guaranteed over 4 years, and the deal, the original mega deal, is basically done. It's basically ripped up. So it went from him having 8 years left on his deal with the Chiefs to 3, which really opens the door wide open for the New York Jets. Let's start from that angle.
Yeah, I didn't think. Stop. He's surprised me. It's like, I've got my dorky contract point to make, and then you hit me with that. It's funny because he said it effectively ends after 2026, but that's unofficially. Officially, it like goes on beyond that, but it's like these weird ghost dummy years that I'm not totally smart enough to fully understand. But they did similar stuff with Drew Brees and Tom Brady, in the sense that, like, we're going to have control over you, even though we know we have to make you a new contract at the point. You're not actually going to have any chance to get to the open market. But this was a bigger deal than I expected, because it's all guaranteed. It gives him more control sooner in the deal. And I guess it's that point we talked about when he first signed it, that at some point they're going to have to fix him and make him the highest paid guy again. And it only took a few years until he was like, I'm sick of playing against this dirtbag in Cleveland that has $50 million more guaranteed, and then now like 5 other quarterbacks have more guaranteed than me. It's time. I'm just saying, that contract. Let's not forget that contract.
I just I would have had if I owned a house, I would have wagered the fact that there was no way he was just going to sit pat in that 10-year deal or whatever it was, year after year, and just of course this was going to happen. And I try to, with all the white noise we're dealing with left and right, in this league, the contract stuff, cool. You got richer. You deserve it. Have a nice day. It doesn't affect me.
One of my least favorite recurring storylines, I've said it on this podcast, of the last 3 years has been the hand-wringing about, look how underpaid Patrick Mahomes is relative to these other quarterbacks. These contracts, he signed a 10-year deal, but it wasn't like we were revisiting it in 2030. They always make adjustments. They always change it. And look now. Yep. Look at all the digital ink spilled.
Wait, and it's because it's like a salary cap. It's socialism inside of a free market enterprise. People, the most American thing of all is capping these dollars. It's the same reason why LeBron James and Jaylen Brown make the same amount of money. It's like, you can't give LeBron James any more money.
Well, that's just that's a whole broken league over there.
But that's essentially what this league is. The top 10 quarterbacks all make basically the same amount of money, because you can't even go any further.
No, I would say Jaylen Brown. That would be I don't know, Jimmy Garoppolo being the highest paid player in the league.
Right, but Rudy Gobert makes that money too. It's totally ridiculous. But that's Jimmy Garoppolo, Dan, at one point was the highest paid player in the NFL.
See,
did a nice job there.
I made that point for you.
It was before Patrick Mahomes.
Remember when Joe Flacco got his big payday?
Right, he was too.
Joe Flacco, he went to McDonald's after signing his big mega deal. He's just an average Joe.
Anyway, by the way, I saw Joe Flacco in person. I think I told you this a couple times. During the New York Super Bowl, with the snowfall coming down on that Monday morning after, and Joe Flacco exited the hotel where I was staying, and it was my impression of Joe Flacco was kind of dull, boring, but in person, dashing, far taller than you'd expect, commands a presence. All these mid-tier looking quarterbacks, in person, are 5 times more.
Yes. We've heard the Mark has decided Joe Flacco is hot now story.
But you know what?
It was just striking.
He's not alone. There's actually a subculture on Twitter of Baltimore people who just post pictures of Joe Flacco at the local McDonald's, because he's just always around, walking around to different
McDonald's
places.
A lot, apparently.
Maybe it's I had McDonald's on the brain, but it's just random places in Baltimore where he's hanging out, and he's really casual, and he's kind of looking more like a surfer now, and it's all these. I think he's popular. I think he's popular with the ladies.
Well, he's probably going to be the Jets quarterback in 3 weeks, so maybe he'll get a haircut, maybe he won't. We'll see. Speaking of storylines that need to go away, I don't need to be talking about Cam Akers and the Rams too much longer. Akers, he disobeyed the culture or something for Los Angeles and was taken out of the lineup last week, and this coming after the drama last season, and There was a culture disobeyment then as well, and the culture needs to be adhered to, and blah, blah, blah. So NFL Network's Ian Rappaport reports that the Rams have had trade talks centered around running back Cam Akers, which we heard last year as well. No trade last year. And guess what? I don't imagine any team is going to want a malcontent on their team anyway, so he'll probably just get released in a couple of days.
Well, they did a bad job by whoever leaked all the cultural reporting. Why let that get out there about this so-called malcontent before you try to shop him for what, like a tube of chapstick? I'm not sure where you're getting a return. He had 29 yards on 22 carries in week 1. What is the asking price?
Well, maybe the Giants, would they give up a 7th-round pick that could upgrade to a 6th-round pick if he had 200 carries, or even just swap 7th-round picks so that the Rams don't have to have the embarrassment of cutting this guy? But you're right, Mark, because that sideline report, I hope all the teams know about that sideline report of like whatever the culture thing was. I think it was that you have to pledge allegiance to the Rams when you walk in. It's this whole thing about Les Snead and McVay, and he didn't do that when he walked into the building.
Then
McVay tried to say afterwards, "Oh no, it was nothing. We just thought it was best for the team. He's been great." It's like no one's believing you.
You have disobeyed the culture. If you disobey and do not follow our culture, you will be eliminated. Something like that.
Kyron Williams fantasy owners, let's go. 2 big games.
I mean, if I'm going to give up like a day 3 draft pick for a running back in today's NFL, I'm going to go get Jonathan Taylor for a 5th. I mean, that's just me. In other news, here's some quick injury stuff before we say goodbye.
Browns, Jonathan Taylor, that would be kind of spicy, by the way.
Anthony Richardson and Jalen Waddle, Colts quarterback, Dolphins wide receiver, both in concussion protocol. They have to clear that to play in week 3. We shall see. Lions running back David Montgomery, he's out a few weeks. What did he get hurt? What was his malady?
It was a quad injury, and he told reporters in the locker room,
odd quad.
Yeah, it's going to take a couple weeks. And then Dan Campbell went on the podium like 20 minutes later and said he's day-to-day. So that's one team that like they haven't gotten the injury messaging across to their players, because David Montgomery was just being honest, but Dan Campbell was not.
Right. He walked up to the assembled media and said, "I got an odd quad." James Houston, their pass rusher, out 6 to 8 weeks, and Halo Vitae may go to injured reserve. So
they only have their defense, which looked improved against the Chiefs. A lot of questions coming out of the Seahawks game. 1 sack on the year. You've lost Houston. Charles Harris, decent player. You've got the Okwara brother. Julian and Romeo are brothers as pass rushers on this team. That's an unusual scenario. That was news to me. But you're kind of thin there. And I thought they didn't really. They had a chance where they're playing the Seahawks on Sunday with 2 backup tackles and didn't impact the game much. So I don't love that for Detroit. I'm a little concerned about the depth at edge.
All right. Also, the Cardinals were without Budda Baker, their best defensive player, on Sunday against the Giants, and get used to it because he's headed to injured reserve with a hamstring injury. He'll be eligible to return week 7 against the Seahawks. And finally, in injury news, Eagles cornerback Avonte Maddox, he'll undergo surgery for a torn pec. That's never a good thing. Many times it will cost you the season. Also, this is a bad one. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the man who started the blue mask trend in Detroit, he is out indefinitely with a potentially torn pectoral, is the report. NFL Network insiders Rappaport and Garofolo reported Monday night he could miss the rest of the season as well. Ouchers. He's an important part of what they do and a leader in that locker room. And finally, I don't know how plugged in people are on this, but in our town where we live, it is a Mondo deal. There are a couple different strikes going on right now that have completely shut down the entertainment industry, and because of that, networks and streamers and everyone else are scrambling for content and things to put on the air this fall. Well, ABC, they shrugged their shoulders, and they're just going to put the entire Monday Night Football slate on their, Channel 7 where I grew up. Their network channel. I feel like the ESPN's like, hey, wait a second, that sucks. But I guess maybe they get the ratings. I don't know.
Right. I was thinking like if they're going to do this and it's the same company, it's like the same, 4 companies that own the entire world. Like, why don't just do this the whole time? You could have just had Monday Night Football. I'm sure it's doing better than the repeats of Elias. I can't think of an ABC show. Was that a show?
I haven't watched an ABC show since the Wonder Years. So let me see. ABC hit shows.
Dan, I grew up with
Grey's
Channel
Anatomy.
7 too. Grey's Anatomy. Like I grew up with Channel 7 too. I was just wondering, like, I was just thinking this, like reading all this. It's like, what is the subset of people that if you are attached to cable, which everyone has been for 40 years at this point, that you don't have ESPN, but you do have ABC? I feel like there's more people that have ESPN and don't care about ABC or have ABC. It feels like a weird, I don't know what subset you're trying to
Let's bring the
there.
satellite back. They are kind of coming back. I don't know if you know this. We're bringing it back, Dan. Satellite dishes. People are buying the old bunny ears. And you don't have to pay anything. You just buy the ears, you put them up, and you can watch some Jake Browning versus the Rams next Monday night.
Cool. Here's some ABC shows. I mentioned Anatomy. Blackish, I think that's still a show. That was a hit. Abbott Elementary, that's got good pop. I watched one ep. It was fine. Shark Tank.
Colleen loves, and Keisha love Abbott Elementary. That trip to Tybee, it was like all Abbott Elementary, and I fell for it too. I'm a fan. I didn't follow it up after that weekend, but I was a fan.
I believe it's set in like Philadelphia, so that I'm sure factors in as well. Apparently, America's Funniest Home Videos, Mark, is still in the air. There's a show
Those
called
videos
Once Upon a
are still
Time.
funny.
The Bachelor. That's a big one. That's their biggie.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a biggie.
I think Elias is set to come back. Jennifer Garner 2.0. Let's do it.
And I guess Wonder Years is back on again? Is that it?
They've rebooted it.
They did reboot it.
No, you don't say.
New situation.
Right. Great. That's great. That's what we do now. We don't have new ideas anymore. We just reboot good ideas from 30 years ago and try to pass them off. That's where society's at.
Big Funk in our chat here lets us know there's a trend of Gen Z on TikTok using paper clips or staples even as antennas on their TV, and they can make it happen. So that sounds like a fun thing.
Aren't you plucky underdogs? And also, Funk says it actually just got canceled.
Wonder Years, I believe, is gone.
Tough.
I mean, everything's getting canceled.
Tough.
I'm glad we're not canceled.
Well, just wait. Everybody's number gets called eventually. All right. Weird night. I hope you're okay, Nick Chubb. I know you're not okay right now. Let's get him back on the field week 1 next year, Adrian Peterson style, and that would be nice. And we'll be back on Wednesday with the great Colleen Wolfe, and check out our NFL Plus Game of the Week, which was Falcons-Packers, and it's all coming up again around the bend. Heed the call.